straight into it with my panel. From Canberra, Labor MP Joel Fitzgibbon, and from Brisbane, Sky News contributor, former Queensland Premier, Mr Campbell Newman. Joel Fitzgibbon, I'll go to you first. Craig Kelly is not going to join the Labor Party, is he? What did you make of the decision today?
Yeah, it's interesting, Peter. He's a guy that was obviously under a lot of pressure. My best guess is that he's calculated that he's not likely to hold his endorsement with the Liberal Party and therefore will be best placed running as an independent. I don't think he'll join the National Party. I just don't think, with respect, their brand works in that part of Sydney. So his best chance is to run as an independent. So he gives himself now at least 6 months to establish himself as an independent and to give himself his best chance of holding the seat at the next election. That's the only conclusion I can come to.
Look, I agree with your remarks there about being an independent. I would be very surprised, though, that he stays to run in Hughes. I think that he will look for an upper house seat, state or federal, and I do think he'll probably attach himself, probably One Nation more than National Party, but we'll see where we land there. I don't think he'll run as an independent per se. But Campbell, you know, there's been a debate about a lack of freedom of speech in the community, sure, but it's also been one of the defining characteristics of the Liberal Party. Now, I don't agree with everything Craig Kelly says. I have to say, I don't agree with much of what many of the moderates in the Liberal Party say either. And I think that'd be the worry I think Liberal supporters and members would have tonight, that he's been forced out because of things that he's said that others may disagree with. I don't know. What do you think?
Absolutely, Peter. Look, he's a sort of a case of somebody who said things that aren't the sort of the conventional approved script. Sometimes I don't agree with him as well, but he ain't an anti-vaxxer, and yet his Liberal colleagues, and this is the thing, the Liberal colleagues have allowed him to be tarred and feathered in that way, and they have rejected, I suppose, the sort of notion of actually rallying and defending him. You know, this is the trouble with many Liberals, is they believe the stuff that their opponents throw at them, and these things become a reality. So, you know, I think it's a great pity. I remember colourful characters, 40, 50 years ago in federal politics, like Bruce Goodluck from Tasmania, who said all sorts of outlandish things, but he was not only tolerated, he was a figure that was surrounded with some warmth, and we've lost that, sadly.
And he has cut through, right? I think this is really important, Joel. You've got it as well. I think cut through in modern politics is incredibly, it's in short supply. So where a party has it, it shouldn't lose it. But going to the claims made today that there might be instability in the government. Now, look, Joel, you and I lived through 2010. I don't get the sense that this is anything like those crazy couple of years there.
No, that's right, Peter. There's a lot being said about them losing their one-seat majority, but the reality is Labor has 68 seats. There are now 7 crossbenchers, and even in the unlikely event that we had all of them, we still don't have enough. And to do things that become interesting in the parliament, of course, you've got to find an absolute majority most of the time. That's 76, and we're still too short. So I don't think it changes that dynamic very much. I suppose it will make the government a bit more nervous, but Craig Kelly pledged today to support the government and all the important issues like confidence, supply, and all the things they promised they would do in policy prior to the election. So I don't think it changes a lot.
The only issue would be if there was a by-election. Of course, 2010, that term, there was no by-election, unusually for many, many, many decades. That would be the only thing that would throw it up in the air. I want to ask you, Joel, $9 billion to spend from the government today, an increase of $50 a fortnight on the dole. Is Labor going to support that increase?
Oh, I imagine so, Peter. I'm sure there'll be lots of people within the Labor Party that will be arguing it should be more, and I'm sympathetic to it being more as well. But this is around $2 billion every year, and if you make it $100 a fortnight, it quickly becomes $4 billion a year, and there's enormous opportunity cost in that. So we'd all like to see people given a bit more. We all understand that for various reasons, there are many people who find it very difficult to get into the workforce. But at the same time, we do have to be mindful of any disincentive a higher payment might be for people entering the workforce. certainly in my electorate, particularly in the hospitality sector. I have employers all the time screaming because they can't fill their positions. So any extra money above the $50 per fortnight, I'd rather really be seen spent on greater efforts to get people into the workforce. I mean, our end goal here has to be getting people into work, not arguing so much what we should be paying them when they're not in work.
Yeah, I think it's a humane increase. It hadn't been increased for many years, Campbell. I broadly support it, but I tell you, I'd be a lot happier. There was some mutual obligation put in there today, but I'd be much happier if it had come out as well as the return of work for the dole, because that was scrapped under a former Prime Minister. His name is unmentionable, but that's, I think, critically important too.
Look, I think the mutual obligation thing is critically important. And there's also some media stuff around this afternoon about trying to get people in areas of high unemployment to actually, who are single and arguably have the flexibility and the ability to move to areas where there are the jobs. There's talk about them being, given a bit more of an incentive or a bit of pressure to go and seek that work. And that is right and that is proper, particularly if we're seeing the payment increased. I, for one, by the way, perhaps would have been prepared to see it a little bit higher as well, because it has been so long since it was increased. But it's got to come with a bit of tough love as well.
We'll see what happens. Joel Fitzgibbon, Campbell Newman. Gentlemen, thanks for your time.
A great pleasure, Peter.
Thanks,
Campbell.
Peter. Thanks, Joel.